And they eat the exact same meal. Let's get a grilled chicken sandwich and a side salad.
Right, a totally standard healthy lunch.
Exactly. And then they head to the gym and perform the exact same 30-minute resistance workout. Same weight, same reps.
But the outcome is totally different, right? I mean, same inputs, but completely divergent physiological responses.
Yeah.
The 45-year-old often finds themselves, gaining weight or at best stubbornly maintaining, while the 30-year-old easily leans out or builds muscle. It's wild.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because it's like trying to run the newest software on a slightly older smartphone.
Oh, I like that.
Right. You can still do it. You can still open all the apps and execute the commands, but the underlying operating system has fundamentally changed. You have to optimize the settings so the battery doesn't drain by noon.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So today, for our deep dive, we are looking at a really comprehensive stack of source material that basically acts as a manual for that operating system update.
A very much needed update for a lot of people.
Seriously. Our mission today is to decode the science of weight management and fitness for you, especially if you're just starting your journey. We're zeroing in on what is actually happening under the hood as we cross that threshold into our 40s.
And, to fix those battery settings, we first have to establish some biological empathy for our own bodies. I mean, the core shift really starts with your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR.
That's the baseline energy your body needs just to stay alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cellular repair, pumping blood, keeping your temperature up. After 40, this rate naturally drops. It's just biology.
And from what I read in the sources, that drop is largely driven by something called sarcopenia, which is the age-related decrease in muscle mass.
Yep, sarcopenia.
And since muscle is highly metabolically active tissue, losing it means your BMR naturally plummets. But the sources point out this isn't just about losing physical strength, is it?
No, not at all. Sarcopenia actually alters your mitochondrial function. Yeah. The mitochondria are basically the powerhouses of your cells. They convert nutrients into usable energy. So as your muscle mass decreases, your mitochondrial density decreases right alongside it.
So your body physically loses its capacity to burn fat and carbs at the same volume it used to.
Exactly. And compounding that structural decline is this whole cascade of hormonal shifts.
Right, the major players being insulin, cortisol, and sex hormones.
Yeah, depending on your biology, estrogen or testosterone levels begin to fluctuate and steadily decline, which actively changes where your body wants to store fat.
What's fascinating here is how those fluctuating hormones create this compounding effect. Like a drop in testosterone or estrogen directly impacts how the body partitions nutrients, right?
Right. Instead of shuttling calories toward muscle preservation, your body begins favoring fat storage, specifically around the midsection.
The classic belly fat.
Exactly. And simultaneously, our cell receptors naturally become more resistant to insulin, so your pancreas has to pump out way more insulin just to clear the exact same amount of glucose from your bloodstream.
And when insulin levels are chronically elevated, lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat, is essentially chemically locked.
Yes, the door is shut.
Wait, okay, so if my cell receptors are actively resisting insulin and my hormones are prioritizing belly fat over muscle, isn't starting a fitness journey now just, fighting a losing battle?
I get why it feels that way.
It sounds like the system is completely rigged against you.
Well, it only functions like a rigged system if you approach it using the metabolic strategies of a 20-year-old. That's the trap.
Ah, okay. So what do we do differently?
The key is understanding that you can actively rebuild that mitochondrial density we just talked about. You just have to know what kind of tissue to force your body to prioritize.
So what does this all mean for the listener? If sarcopenia and the resulting mitochondrial loss are the culprits, the logical solution is to reverse that specific decline.
Exactly. We need to prioritize muscle growth over obsessing about the generic number on the scale.
We are talking about fundamentally altering your body's resting metabolic state.
Yeah, you are attempting to increase the fixed costs of your biology. Muscle tissue requires continuous caloric expenditure just to exist.
I love that phrase, fixed costs.
It's true. We want your body forced into burning calories 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, merely to maintain the tissue you've built.
Basically, building muscle is like upgrading your car's engine so it burns more fuel, simply idling in the driveway.
That's a great way to put it.
Or even like expanding a city's infrastructure. When you add new buildings and power lines like muscle fibers, the baseline grid just needs more electricity to keep the lights on, even when everyone's asleep.
Perfectly said. And for someone just starting out, the sources map out a highly accessible blueprint for expanding that infrastructure. You don't need to overcomplicate it.
Right. We're looking at simple strength exercises, maybe 2 to 4 times a week.
Yeah, and you can use body weight, resistance bands, or dumbbells. The foundational movements highlighted in the research are things like squats, push-ups, rows, lunges, and dumbbell presses.
And those are specifically selected because they're compound exercises, right?
Yeah. Exactly. They require motor unit recruitment across multiple muscle groups all at the same time.
Like, a squat isn't just a leg exercise. It requires your entire core to stabilize your spine, which triggers a much larger systemic response than just sitting on a leg extension machine.
Right. The mechanical tension created by those compound movements is what actually triggers muscle protein synthesis. You're sending a localized stress signal that tells your central nervous system, hey, we need more structural integrity here.
And the sources suggest a really straightforward beginner routine to manage this, like upper body focus on Monday, lower body on Wednesday, and a full body integration on Friday.
Yep. And it's important to emphasize here, even just 30 focused minutes per session is highly effective.
Oh, that's such a relief. You do not need to live in the gym to send that signal.
Not at all. But forcing those muscle fibers to adapt and grow creates an immediate secondary problem. They require massive amounts of raw material to actually rebuild.
Which naturally leads us to diet. We have to fuel for stability. You can't put cheap gas in that upgraded engine.
Definitely not. And linking back to the drop in insulin sensitivity we mentioned earlier, the sources are adamant that crash diets like severe caloric restriction are an absolute disaster after 40.
Oh yeah, they totally backfire.
Because severe restriction triggers something called gluconeogenesis. When the body senses a famine and you aren't eating enough protein, it will literally break down the very muscle tissue you are trying to build just to harvest amino acids for energy.
Oh wow. So it cannibalizes your new metabolic engine just to keep the brain functioning.
Yeah, it's terrible for your metabolism, so the focus has to shift entirely to nutrient density.
The sources outline a really standard beginner meal plan for this. Let's see, eggs and a whole grain toast for breakfast, a grilled chicken salad with olive oil for lunch,
Sounds pretty good.
a handful of almonds for a snack, and fish with vegetables and brown rice for dinner.
See, on the surface, that looks like incredibly basic, generic diet advice, like stuff we've all heard a million times. But from an endocrinology standpoint, there are very specific mechanisms at play there. If we look at the macronutrient profile, increasing your protein intake is just non-negotiable.
Because it maintains the muscle and controls hunger.
Exactly. And protein has a high thermic effect. Your body expends up to 30% of the calories in the protein just breaking the bonds during digestion.
That's basically free calorie burn. And then there's the fiber and healthy fats, right? The vegetables, the whole grains, the almonds, the olive oil.
Right. Those aren't just there for calories or vitamins. They mechanically change your digestive process. They alter the rate of gastric emptying.
So when you eat refined sugars or ultra-processed foods, which you'll notice aren't in that meal plan, they digest rapidly.
Way too fast. The stomach empties into the small intestine, and a ton of glucose just floods the bloodstream.
Okay, so wait. Is pairing protein and fats with complex carbs basically like putting a speed bump on the digestion highway to stop a blood sugar crash?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy is perfect. By introducing protein and fiber, you physically slow down how fast the stomach empties. The glucose just trickles into your bloodstream instead.
That speed bump prevents the rapid glucose spike, which stops the pancreas from panicking and releasing a massive surge of insulin.
Exactly. And by keeping those insulin levels stable, you prevent that chemical locking of your fat cells we talked about.
That fundamentally changes the conversation from what you are eating to how you are eating it.
Yeah.
You don't have to banish rice entirely.
Yeah.
You just have to pair the rice with the fish and the broccoli so the fiber and protein blunt the response.
It's a game changer. And the sources offer an incredible, super simple workday strategy to manage this even further. Just walking for 10 to 15 minutes immediately after a meal.
I love this part.
It's brilliant. When you engage the large muscles in your legs, they require immediate cellular energy. And those muscle contractions trigger the translocation of GLUT4 receptors to the surface of the cells.
And GLUT4 acts as a gateway, pulling glucose straight out of the bloodstream to use as fuel. But the crucial part is that this muscle contraction pathway is completely independent of insulin, right?
Yes. You are clearing sugar from the blood without requiring the pancreas to do the heavy lifting at all. It's a secondary mechanical system to control your blood sugar spikes.
Okay, so let's say a beginner implements this framework, They do their 30-minute strength workouts. They pair carbs with protein to blunt insulin. They do their post-meal walks. They're checking all the conscious boxes.
Right. They're doing great.
But the sources highlight two invisible saboteurs that can completely derail all this progress.
Because your conscious choices operate within a subconscious hormonal environment, and that environment is dictated by stress and sleep.
Let's look at the stress component first, specifically cortisol. Because we tend to think of stress as just an emotional thing, right? Like, oh, I'm feeling stressed. But it's a potent physical hormone.
It really is. Cortisol is our evolutionary alarm system. In an acute scenario, like running from a bear, cortisol floods your blood with glucose to fuel your escape.
But our modern environment, financial anxiety, demanding jobs, doom scrolling, it keeps that alarm ringing continuously at a low level.
Yeah, the body perceives a constant impending threat, and it responds by aggressively storing energy. But the really fascinating detail from the sources is where it stores that energy.
It heavily promotes visceral fat,
Yeah.
right? The deep belly fat that wraps around your organs.
Yep. Visceral fat cells have a significantly higher density of cortisol receptors compared to the fat just under your skin. So when stress remains elevated day after day, it actively redirects fat storage straight to your midsection.
Wow. Which explains why you could be eating grilled chicken and doing squats in a calorie deficit and still see an expanding waistline if you're constantly stressed.
Absolutely. It's a localized survival mechanism. So the sources suggest intervening with simple daily practices like 20-minute walks, deliberate deep breathing, or a short meditation.
And we aren't talking about reaching spiritual enlightenment here.
No.
We're talking about actively forcing your nervous system to shift from fight or flight to rest and digest so you can lower that circulating cortisol.
Exactly. And this raises an important question regarding the other invisible saboteur, sleep. How often are we attempting to out-diet a massive sleep deficit?
Oh, all the time. But sleep directly regulates two critical hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin.
Right. Ghrelin is the hormone that signals hunger to your brain, and leptin is the hormone that signals satiety. It tells the brain, hey, we have enough energy, you can stop eating now.
And when you restrict sleep to even 5 or 6 hours a night, that whole system fractures. Ghrelin surges so you feel ravenous, and leptin plummets, removing the chemical brake that tells you you're full.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources give a stark illustration. An individual regularly sleeping 5 hours a night is highly predisposed to weight gain, regardless of how perfectly they manage their diet.
Wait, you're telling me that I could have my meal plan totally dialed in? But if I stay up scrolling on my phone and only sleep 5 hours, my brain will literally force me to crave junk food.
Yes. A leptin deficit isn't just a minor increase in appetite. Your prefrontal cortex, your willpower, is actively fighting your hypothalamus. Your brain perceives the lack of sleep as an emergency energy shortage.
So it physically demands the fastest, most dense source of energy available to combat the exhaustion. Hello, sugar cravings.
Exactly. You cannot willpower your way out of a neuroendocrine mandate. The hormonal drive to consume excess calories just becomes overwhelming over time. Sleep is a foundational metabolic requirement. Target 7 to 8 hours.
Okay, but let's take a step back. If I'm a beginner listening to this, processing this sheer volume of physiology, managing GLUT4 with walks, balancing amino acids, deep breathing to lower cortisol, fiercely guarding 8 hours of sleep, it sounds incredibly overwhelming.
It does. It sounds like a full-time job.
How do we keep this from becoming a miserable chore?
Well, attempting to optimize every single biological pathway overnight is the most common trap. It leads directly to burnout. The stress of trying to be perfectly healthy actually spikes the very cortisol we are trying to lower.
Oh, the irony.
So the final concept the sources emphasize is psychological sustainability, the long game.
Consistency over perfection, right? Extreme diets or extreme workouts fail because they're acute interventions. The body adapts to chronic, predictable signals.
Right. The sources introduce the 80% rule. If you provide the correct metabolic inputs, the strength training, the protein, the sleep, 80% of the time, the system will adapt.
Yeah.
The body achieves a new, healthy baseline.
So if you mess up your meal plan one day, you haven't failed. If you go to a birthday party, eat a piece of cake without a speed bump of protein and stay up until 2 in the morning, you haven't destroyed your metabolism.
Not at all.
You just fell into the 20% indulgence bracket for the day. You're still winning the long game.
And reliable health organizations completely validate this approach. The sources specifically point to guidelines from the World Health Organization, the CDC, and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health.
And none of them advocate for, like, crazy 30-day shred programs or internet fad diets.
No, they all anchor their recommendations on balanced, evidence-based habit formation. Because sustainable health is about adjusting to your changing physiology, not imposing artificial, miserable restrictions upon it.
Right. So to synthesize everything we've decoded today, navigating weight management and fitness after 40 isn't about punishing your body for aging. It is about alignment.
Yes,
You are
exactly.
aligning your daily habits with your biology's new reality. You build muscle to expand your metabolic engine. You eat strategically to blunt insulin spikes.
Yeah.
You guard your sleep, and you manage stress to keep cortisol from hoarding belly fat. You're basically taking that slightly older smartphone and deliberately giving it the optimized settings it needs.
It becomes a collaboration with your physiology, and that leaves us with a really provocative concept to consider.
Ooh, let's hear it.
If our bodies naturally become more efficient at storing energy as we age, and hormones like cortisol increase our baseline alertness, perhaps we shouldn't view these changes as a biological flaw or a slowdown.
Right.
What if, from an evolutionary standpoint, your body is simply trying to make you perfectly resilient and energy secure for the second half of your life? How does shifting your mindset from fighting your body to collaborating with your body change the way you approach your very next meal?
Well, collaborating with your biology to become more resilient. Instead of cursing the changing operating system, you just learn to master it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you're walking away with a stronger grasp of the science and the tools you need to optimize your own metabolic engine. Keep asking great questions, keep analyzing your habits, and above all, stay curious.